the 11th.
Good afternoon and welcome to our March 11th Town Council meeting. We are going to start with a work session today with the Green Team. Before we do that, I just want to remind everybody, if you want to join up to the meeting online, you can go to basalt.net and check out the agendas and minutes tab. And then from there, you go find the meeting packet for this week, and it has all the instructions you need to join on Zoom, and that'll enable you later on to make comments and things like that and interact with the meeting. But with that, I will turn it over to Michelle and Sarah, who are going to walk us through a presentation and a work session for Green Team. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, I'll be discussing the greenhouse gas emissions inventory reports and just kind of hitting some highlights of these reports and talking about some successes and talking about some opportunities. So we can go to the next page, please. This is just a reminder that a greenhouse gas emissions inventory report is completed every 3 years for the town of Basalt, and this is per our climate action plan that was adopted in 2017. The baseline report was generated in 2014, and subsequent reports have been completed in 2017, 2020, and recently 2023. The 2020 report, if you remember, does have 2019 data that has also been analyzed and integrated into the report because it was kind of showing some false lows due to the pandemic at the time. The reports have focus areas in the categories of waste, transportation, buildings, and newly in 2023, we're seeing a category for fugitive emissions. And in 2023, this is the first year that we've done, that the town has participated in a regional report with Picken County. Picken County actually approached Basalt. They had received a DOLA grant and were able to fund individual reports for the communities with a very small input financially from the town and for participating municipalities, and also a regional report. So this was a really great regional success. So we are going to talk tonight just some highlights from our standalone Basalt report, the Picken County regional report, as well as Eagle County's report that has also been completed at the end of last year. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is just a reminder of Basalt's greenhouse gas emissions goals, which is to achieve 25% below 2014 levels by 2025 and 80% below 2014 levels by 2050. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is some highlights of the Basalt report for 2023, showing that buildings, which is the stationary energy column, is emitting 42% of all of our total emissions. Residential is at 47%, and commercial and multifamily is slightly higher at 52%. And for the first time, this report shows a decrease in emissions from the building sector. We know that is largely due to the greening of the grid for Holy Cross Energy, which is a wonderful success for us. Transportation emissions, and this is on-road and aviation emissions, are total 43% of Basalt's total emissions. Basalt has seen an increase in on-road travel in this 2023 report. Transportation emissions have been adjusted. Their calculation methodology, again, it was adjusted. And this is resulting in a more comprehensive methodology in both vehicle miles traveled as well as aviation. And with this enhanced reliability of the emissions data, adjustments were made to the 2019 report data, so there could be a more accurate comparison between the two reports, which is pretty important. So we see that there was actually less, with those adjusted vehicle miles traveled at the 2019 report, there's actually less of a change from year to year, from report to report. In the waste category, waste is totaling 15% of total emissions, and this is nearly all landfilled waste, so that presents a really good opportunity for us going forward. And this is an increase since the 2019 data. If you can go to the next slide, please. This is just gives you a nice kind of overview as to where each of, the emissions in each of these categories, how they're broken out. And if you can go to the next one, please. So this is just some takeaways that I want to share. The data shows a very minor increase of only 4% in total emissions since 2019. And when we adjust that transportation methodology for the 2019 analysis to the newest methodology, then we actually see a decrease in emissions. Let's just scrap what I was saying there. We're seeing a decrease in building emissions for the first time since we started doing these reports. We're seeing a minor increase in transportation emissions is where I was going there. And for the first time, we're actually seeing transportation eclipsing buildings. So while that's, we want to see everything go down, it's really interesting to see a change in categories for the very first time since we've started doing these reports. We've always seen buildings being our highest emitter. So we're really getting at some positive things in the building sector. If you go to the next slide, please. The consultants did project the emissions to 2015 or 2050, and this is if Basalt maintained a business as usual model since 2023. And it does show some reduction, but of course additional efforts would be needed to meet the climate action goals. You can go to the next slide, please. We know that there has been significant efforts made in each of these categories since 2023 that are not reflected, at this point. We're going to see those in future reports. So buildings, we have adopted the 2021 IECC. We've enhanced our sustainable building regulations. We've also done some projects like the Basalt Solar Project. That's, a local project that's a small win for both the town and the school district and really Basalt in general. In the transportation category, we have the Basalt Connect successful rideshare program in town that takes additional single occupancy vehicles off the street. We have an enhanced WeCycle presence in town, and I believe that Basalt was the highest ridership in the valley in 2024. Is that correct? We've also initiated the e-bike rebate program, which was a great success. We've done this in the last 2 years, and last year it was a very successful program. And under waste, the community compost program just kicked off, and that has been seeing a lot of success. A lot of people are really excited to be part of that. So these changes will be reflected in that 2026 report, and so we can see, that we're moving in the right direction. So I'm going to provide some overview of the Pickens County report, and then move on to the Eagle County report, and then we can open up for questions. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the Pickens County Regional Report, here's our partners. We unincorporated Pickens County, Snowmass Village, Aspen, and Basalt, and both sides, both the Eagle County and Pickens County portions were included within this report that was generated. If you want to go to the next slide, please. And this is their, again, that graph showing the emissions by sector and source. Some takeaways here, the transportation emissions with the new methodology shows just a 7% increase, which is fairly positive, as we know that we do have a lot of cars on the road. Fugitive emissions, those were captured for the first time. And these are methane emissions from abandoned coal mines in the region that are included for the first time. Previous inventories focused only on local oil and gas wells. So we're looking, really at that coal basin project that's been going on, and we know that that is a very significant project. And so it's been added for the first time. Building emissions since 2019, electricity emissions have decreased by 8%, and that's wonderful news. Natural gas has increased by 6%, so we really just get that net of 2% overall decrease in emissions from the building sector. But again, we're, regionally as a whole county, we are moving in the right direction. Would you like to go to the next slide, please? I think that's where I'm at. Yeah. So again, with that updated methodology for transportation and the addition of fugitive emissions, we're seeing a 22% overall increase from the 2019 report. So it's capturing emissions we hadn't captured before, and so it's not a surprise. So we're seeing a decrease in emissions from buildings from the last report. And I think another thing to really celebrate is that this is the first report that's been produced through regional partnerships and collaboration. So this report leads to a comparable and consistent methodology. We can look at things across our entire Pickens County region for the first time and really compare our numbers. We used to all have a different methodology of doing this reporting, so that is really a win to see where we can really dig in regionally and work together in the future. And next slide, please. And then some takeaways from the Eagle County report. This report was accomplished through the Climate Action Collaborative, which Basalt is a member of. And here's a slide with all of the partners with the collaborative. Next slide, please. And this is one of the overall wins I want to highlight. This is the building emissions by community that is being cut off at the top there. Since 2014, each major community in Eagle County has decreased its building emissions, which is no small feat there. And this is largely, again, due to the clean energy provided by Holy Cross and Excel Energy over there, which will continue to improve and things will continue to get better, as well as, of course, enhanced building codes. Next slide, please. So overall, the regional report shows just a 6% increase from the 2014 baseline, which is really impressive given the level of growth that every community is experiencing. The emissions have leveled for the first time with just a 0.12 increase over 2022 data, and that's pretty incredible. Electricity-related emissions saw a significant decrease of 35% since 2014. Next report, please. Or slide, thank you. So each report, this is heavy stuff, a lot of numbers, a lot of data. Each report does indicate some hope and some great wins, showing that individually as well as regionally, we are really moving in the right direction. And I want to highlight that because I know, we all have these goals. We're not every community has these goals, slightly different than ours. A lot of them, overlap and they're very similar. Seeing that emissions have really come down and really leveled tells us that we are going to start taking that turn downward in that next report, which is what we want to see. The two regional reports do highlight the particular challenges of Eagle and Pickens counties and how we face, higher emissions than the state average. And they're saying due to our commuting workforce and impacts of visitors to the region. So that's just, we're gonna get a lot of people traveling in and through our communities. The majority of all emissions are found in categories of ground transportation, and they do highlight, public transit, but that plays a very small role in contributing to emissions. So to me, that also spells out an opportunity. And buildings, particularly commercial and multifamily, those are also areas where we have opportunities. So these are where we can focus and refine our efforts. With this, we want to keep collaborating regionally, keep those strong efforts up. In 2024, there was a roadmap to net zero emissions, if you recall, that was created and adopted by the majority of communities in the Tri-County area. Again, that's something that everyone who adopted it is going to be moving forward, and we're going to see the results of that in our 2026 reports. So we can expect to see some positivity moving forward in our next reports. I think it's not all heavy and doom and gloom. I think we're making some really great efforts here. Michelle, is there anything you'd like to add with that?
No, I think that's a great summary. We're open to questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. What questions do y'all have? I'll start with one. So the 4% seems like pretty modest growth. What other comparisons, I guess, are there as far as how we've grown as a community? Like the economy, I don't know, some things to kind of measure that against. In other words, is the rate of change for emissions, less than the rate of change for some other things, indicating an increase in population or economic impact, things like that?
Yeah, it's really hard for us because since we weren't part of actually doing the reports, we don't have all of that analytical data. But I think that the short version of the story is that Pickens County and Eagle are tracking in a similar fashion, having done all of these transportation improvements and the building code changes.
Each community is growing. This is 2023, so I kind of paused because I was thinking, I'm not sure where we were with growth in 2023, and I think that's a really valid question. You know, it was coming out of the pandemic and things were changing and people had moved to our area. So I think it's a really great question. I don't have a really good answer for you at the moment,
That's
unfortunately.
okay. I mean, it's something to think about, you know, how are we, if we can grow emissions less
Yeah.
than other means, measures of growth, that's good in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, when this presentation went to the Green Team last night, and something that came up there was they were really interested in the transportation aspect of it. And that was, you know, all of this traffic isn't generated or staying in Basalt. It's obviously, some of that measurement is driving through. And some discussion about how to work regionally about dealing with traffic and finding traffic relieving measures. So, as we all know, there's more traffic.
Yep.
Yeah, those percentages were, what was it, 50%?
It's way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 150% on electric, which that means the amount of emissions that come about from charging and dealing with electric vehicles, which means, you know, that's a nice increase in the amount of electric vehicles. It's better than, you know, as far from an emission standpoint per car, but so that was interesting. I thought like this. So that went up a lot, but so did.
It was also the first time that was called out separately. You know, that was the first report where we got a standalone on, you know, the different types of vehicles on the road,
Yeah, that was
which was
interesting.
interesting.
And I think in 2023, Holy Cross, for example, was not as far along. I mean, they've made huge strides just in 24 of getting to 95% clean energy. So I'm sure those emissions from the electric are, you know, based on 22 and 23 numbers, are really poor in comparison to where we are now.
Be interesting to keep tracking that, you know, in a kind of a consistent way to track that plus other things.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
Along those lines, do we have EV charging infrastructure plans in the works? I mean, in my head, like the most common sense place for that is in park and ride lots, just because they're right along the highway, so that might be more RAFTA than us.
Yeah. That is some conversations we had last year as well. We were part of an effort to you know, support regionally within each county areas that would benefit from enhanced electric vehicle infrastructure. And we, as all the communities kind of put in, here's what we think would go well, but they were really looking for like projects that would really not only generate, you know, a high amount of volume, but also that were pretty ready to go. And so we have a really good infrastructure in Basalt. For the size of Basalt, we're really impressive, to tell you the truth, with EV infrastructure. And so what ended up winning for our region was like Brush Creek up Valley, which is going to be good for a lot of commuters there.
Great.
I have a question on the compost rollout.
Yes.
Did we give away all our buckets?
The buckets were all spoken for very quickly. I want to say in just maybe a week or so. We have a few folks that are still trickling in and showing that, you know, they've received it. We're one of the first 50 and they are eligible to pick it up. I think that as of early this month, so it's probably changed even since then, we had 90 people who had signed up for it. Everyone who's come in has been like, this is amazing. We've wanted this for years. Thanks for showing us how to get it done. It's been awesome. We've had great feedback. We have had, I believe, about 20% of the overall requests that have come in, or the folks that have taken like the quiz and wanted to be part of the program, are from unincorporated areas just outside of the town's boundaries.
Sure.
And so that is something that is of interest to the Green Team.
Yeah, we spoke about that last night at the Green Team meeting. I think we had 12 applicants who are in our 3-mile planning radius, but outside the town limits. And so we had this discussion with the Green Team. Should we should we support them composting here? Should we not? And I mean, at the end of the day, 12 people dropping off their household compost, it might cost us $50. So the green team said, are you kidding? Just do it. So that's where we are until it turns into a problem for us economically and we're having to have another thing, but we're not there yet.
How much is getting used? How many containers are there?
We have one container so far, and we've been running for a month.
Yeah.
Pick up once a week. Mhm.
Please open it up to them.
Please open it up. Oh, yes, will do.
I mean, it's the lowest hanging fruit that we can do, and
Mhm.
it's the easiest,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
cost-effective
Yeah,
way to keep stuff out of the dump.
done.
And are we tracking how many people are using it? Do they
Yes.
have individual codes, or is it the same code?
They have to fill out the quiz, so we have their name, and they have to fill out the quiz, actually, and once they complete the quiz with their contact information, then they get the code. So that's how we know how many people.
But then we don't track post.
We're
No.
not tracking individual times, if that's
Yeah.
what you're thinking.
Usage rates, yeah.
Just usage, just general usage. Out of those 90 people, is there 5 super users? Is there 10 super users? Is there someone coming every 2 weeks? Are we doing any like tracking on?
No, we're not equipped to do that at this point. What we can track right now is that we have one container, and we can see how fast that container fills up and kind of extrapolate how many times 90 people are dumping into a single container, and if that needs to be picked up once a week, or if we need a second container, if we have a bunch of, if we have that, a super user, or 5, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, figure out a typical volume per user and the volume of the,
I mean, couldn't we put like one of those car trackers in there that you drive over?
I don't know.
Don't we have those?
No,
Public Works doesn't have?
no.
does it have its own driveway or some way?
You
Yeah,
have to swing.
just where that's located, I mean, anything's possible, but, if it's sitting on top of the ground and it snows,
Yeah, you should.
you got some of that. It would probably need to be something on the side of the, on the side of the building or something.
Or like when the door
Somehow.
opens.
Yeah, maybe something along
But
those
we can discuss how we can track it, because I'm sure there's a way. And it might be as simple, people who are going through the effort to compost there might just tell us. We might just survey them at the end of each month, and they might just tell us.
Yeah, that would be great. I
Yeah.
just think we should definitely keep tracking. I mean, we're gonna know because of how many times that bin needs to get picked up, but I would love just as many numbers as we can get from.
One thing that I will just share with you guys with regard to bringing in people from out of the town limits, I would just go into that with eyes wide open. Yes, it's a great offering of a new service, but to the extent it really catches on, we've lived through this already with the recycling center over off of Willets Lane. The county's stopped servicing it, and we had a few months left, and we were kind of able to cobble it together, but the cost of it became prohibitive, and the majority of the people were the county residents that were making noise about it. We don't really have a lot of room over there, particularly as that property gets developed. So if we have to make a choice in the future of, moving it or getting rid of that community one, and then people are accustomed to it, it's, just something to be aware of as you think through that, and the cost associated with it in the long run too. So, not saying not to do it, but just easy to say, hard to do if you're making changes to that in the future.
Could we do a pay-to-play, though, if that became a problem, to say, like, look, we're getting your address when you fill out your quiz. If you pay us $50 or whatever it is, we'll give you the code?
Yeah, I think the exciting thing, in Aspen is that they've had 2 containers, and it's just been a matter of how often the containers get emptied. So as it really caught on, they had 2 containers emptied twice a week. And for reference, for us to have 1 container emptied once a week is, I think, $125. So
6-gallon one?
A week or
a month.
It's a month.
It's not very expensive.
No, I know. 'Cause I
So, yeah, I think,
I was just wondering if they charge us commercial rates or something.
no. So I think if, we can, it's definitely something we can probably work out.
Y'all have comments?
One of the things I've been kind of following is the issue of keeping the workforce closer to home down in the I-70 corridor. And then the other one through Northwest Cog is over tourism, and they're kind of balancing each other out, I think. There's going to be more tourist traffic but less commuter traffic. That may just be a seesaw kind of thing. The other thing I think about is Garfield County and their economic development that's going to happen down at the Rifle Airport, and they've got some new quantum, it's technology. They've referred to it as quantum. I just got,
Quantum, like
Quantum
computing?
yeah, quantum computers. And that industry's coming to the lower I-70 corridor. So, we're also seeing the projects in Glenwood and Garfield get completed a lot quicker, so there's less construction impact. But the construction impact of a home in Aspen is for 3 or 4 years now, and not 1 or 2 years. So there's a lot of, I'm glad Eagle and Picken are working together, but there's a big chunk of this that's not in the equation. That if we could get some information about that, that would be interesting. Because we'll see a drop-off in commuter traffic, I think. And I think Raft has already seen some drop-off in the ridership to Aspen with more people getting off in Carbondale. So that, there's a lot going on there.
There's some discussion with the partners on the Picken County report. We'll come back and have some more discussions on it. It is that, that leisure and tourism piece that you don't want to dissuade. We have an economy that's in the region that is very dependent on this. It's very, it's very good for the region, of course, and for business, but it's also that piece of like, what do you do with that? It's, we do know that that's where a lot of the traffic is generated. Not all of it. We're doing a good job of having that, live where you work kind of thing, or nearby where you work. We're doing better and better on that. But to address your point, yeah, it's interesting to see where that goes and what kind of conversations we'll have about that.
City Market in Algebel was always a benchmark because that was a regional shopping center.
Yeah.
And it still seems to be that it is, that a lot of shopping comes in there from Carbondale and Glenwood, and, I think that's something that we've been watching for quite a while. And, maybe there is gonna be some leakage economically from Basalt and sales tax and things like that when the commuters stop coming up here. I don't know, but there's trends out there that are pretty interesting to see, and they're competing with each other.
Yeah.
Bringing more visitors and guests, but having less workforce because they're all staying home is kind of a catch-22 at some level. So it'll be interesting to watch.
The airport redesign as well is going to try and increase how many tourists are using public transportation. Right now, about 3% of people that fly into the Aspen airport use the bus to get to their hotel. But with the airport redesign, part of that idea is that it will be an obvious choice to get on the bus, and we'll have buses that can accommodate luggage. Whereas right now you have to walk past every single rental car company and then downstairs and across a parking lot to get to the bus, and they would flip that order.
Well, that's what's the possibilities, right?
Yeah.
That could happen. But that's 10 years, probably, before it's fully fleshed out. When they get that done. It'll be interesting to see this summer what the impact is of having the airport closed.
Sure.
Should help that aviation number.
Yeah, private.
you know. That's a
Again, it'll be like the pandemic, a false dip, you know?
solid 12 off or whatever, you know.
I think my main takeaway from the basalt emissions chart is that any piece that is electricity is going to go to zero emissions by the time Holy Cross gets to 100% clean energy. So the chunks that are in under our power to change are things like our building codes, our commercial building codes, our residential building codes, to make sure that we are making sure those are all electric, so that once Holy Cross gets to 100% clean energy, those buildings have zero carbon emissions. Like, we can work on transportation, we're working on transportation, and we'll keep doing that, but I think the electric building code piece is an important part of this equation.
Along that line of thought of what we control versus what other, but basically different ways to control things. I noticed in the Pitkin County report, the 2,397% increase in oil and gas wells. And I'm assuming that chart's, is that metric tons? Is that what, that are?
It is.
Okay.
It is metric tons, and
So-
it's capturing things that hadn't been captured in the past.
Yeah, I figured it was like
Yeah.
a new way to measure, but
Yeah.
you know, if you strip that out, because that's kind of a, if I'm not mistaken, kind of more of a federal permitting process that would govern that, right? You strip that out, I was doing this back on the envelope, it's 12%. So now it's like, as far as the Pitkin County increase, which is a little more encouraging. I guess the one thing I'm, just food for thought on that, not really a question or anything. But along those same lines, like if you had a magic wand, what else do we need to do? Like how hard do we need to go? Because if you look at the business as usual, like it's way above the line, the trend line that we need to get to. And not to take away from any of the great accomplishments that people are doing, but I wonder, like, what do we really need to do to bring it down? Like, what are some of the hard choices that we're gonna need to make and subsequent councils are gonna need to make in order to meet our emissions goals? And I think it, you know, even if it's things like, oh, we can't do that, it's too much, getting those things out on the table. So this is what it would really take, you know, if we could muster the political will to do it. It would be good to have that stuff surfaced, so we all can see it, and then, you know, people have to make decisions, you know?
Yeah. One of the things we have in the works towards that goal is a building IQ program. So as we all know, Basalt's mostly built out, and we have a lot of existing buildings that don't meet current high energy efficiency building codes. So starting to track our largest buildings this first year, and then moving on to tracking the next largest buildings, and so on over the years, and then making recommendations. And then the hard part will be allocating money to assist those properties in getting up to speed and making modifications to their buildings to achieve the energy efficiency. For buildings that were built in the 90s, that's going to be hard. But that's a big lift, and that's something that Basalt can absolutely control. That's the first easy one. That's not an easy one, but it's the first easy one to roll off. The first year is
easy to say.
voluntary. The first year is voluntary in tracking building utility bills. So that's the easy part. After that, it gets a little more complicated.
And do we have funds allocated to help with those retrofits or things like that? Or is that something we'd rely on CORE for?
We have
Or
funds
it would be
allocated to
private capital?
CORE this year, but we won't know until we've tracked these we're determining those buildings right now, actually. CORE's working on that, because it's a voluntary program, so we have to convince the property owners that it's a safe program to participate in, and that there's a benefit to them at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, the benefit is getting some version of rebates, which we do have in the budget, but also in the long run, lowering their utility bills. So it's seeing who's interested in that. And so we'll be rolling out a lot more information on that as this year goes on, and just really promoting those property owners and giving them the opportunity to be success stories in Basalt to try to encourage other property owners to do that. But probably those numbers will go up in future budget requests.
I think it would be right for them to go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious, we're gonna have to spend more money. Everyone's gonna have to put more resources behind this than we're doing now in order. The question is, what are the things that are gonna move the needle? They may be hard, and then what is that gonna take? And we gotta, not just us, but as a region and state, et cetera. I mean, right now, that's not the way the wind's blowing at the federal level, but that wind needs to change, and we're gonna need to do this stuff, and I think just being ready
Absolutely.
as a town and as a region is gonna be important, just to say, this is what it's gonna take.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we need, and what we need to go ask for together, all that stuff, you know.
Mhm. Yep, those conversations we'll continue having, and like you're saying, what's the extremes, what are the hard things that we can really put everything on the table and kind of go through that exercise, I think is really worthy, and I think that's something we'll be discussing, you know, with the green team and at a regional level.
Yeah, and the upshot is, I think that this region is willing to have those, it's not,
Yes.
they're not allergic to these conversations.
Yeah.
Right now, it's probably other places not so much, but here, you know, it's encouraging that people do care about this stuff and still will entertain these ideas and work towards it. So,
Absolutely.
just be positive. I want to say something positive.
Yeah.
One of the things Pitkin's looking at is the TDR program that would allow, if they could partner with the city of Aspen, to allow a homeowner on Cemetery Lane that's been there for 25 or 30 or 40 years to sell development rights from their house to a person that wants to build a 9750 in the appropriate area. And that funding would help them go ahead and do a conversion or add an ADU. And it's a pretty brilliant idea that Glenn Horn came up with. And that's what caused them to divide their 2,000 square foot TDRs into 500 square foot chunks. So that somebody that was in a 3,500 square foot 80s house anywhere up there, Mountain Valley, could participate in the TDRs and receive 500, 1,000 square feet worth of benefit that another person could build out. And that struck me as a really out-of-the-box kind of thought process. In Basalt, you know, you mentioned that we're built out, but we haven't, the redevelopment in Basalt that's going to happen and how that is sold, who gets to participate in that. If you want to keep locals here, there's going to have to be a mechanism to work towards that. So if there's somebody that wants to redevelop a 1,000 square foot chicken coop up on the hill into a 5,000 square foot house, maybe there's some leverage there. And if, some people have been contacting me about a couple of those that have, you know, grown into pretty good sized houses on those lots. But there's something there, and maybe that could be something we could look at. 'Cause that allows, and that also, what came along with that is that people were able to pass those homes on to their kids,
Right.
which is a nice thought. Keep generational citizens.
Yeah.
This isn't on you guys, but I feel like this is the second time we get a report where they change how they're calculating something. And I feel like it skews our numbers, and you start looking at it and going, well, and I was gonna bring up the gas wells too, like, that's skewing the number, granted, it's still growing. But like the last time it was vehicles, and I know we now have the.
And it is this
VM
time too.
Yeah,
vehicles.
but it's like, what, how are we really supposed to get a baseline number when every time we're planning off a skewed report? And it feels like the skew is always up, which is fine. I just when you guys are in these meetings, we need to have a baseline to actually do something, and every time we go, it's like Lucy pulling the football, like, hey, just kidding. Like,
I can appreciate how that does feel like that. I think, you know, things get better, technology improves, we have access to better information, to cleaner, to better, you know, clearer information. And I think to to not go with that, to ignore that would be a disservice. It is, but it does feel like the football, like Lucy in the football, right, or Charlie Brown, and it keeps moving. But I think the overall picture remains the same, as that we're fighting with with changing in these categories. And, okay, so we sprung up a new category with fugitive emissions, but it didn't mean it didn't exist before. It just means we have to look at it now, and we have to get an honest picture of what it looks like. I can appreciate what you're saying, because I was thinking the same thing when I was talking to Green Team last night. Like, okay, we're doing it again with transportation. You were here for the last one, and transportation, we thought we had the new thing, and now it's like, it's not super different than that last time, but it's better. It's just better data. It's better data gathering service. And so we have to go with it better.
But then do they go back and do we get different baselines from that new collection? Are they able to like stabilize that number with the way they're collecting it now with
All the way
other
to
numbers?
2014?
Or is it just, hey, this is our new baseline, let's get this one now?
Some aspects of it are stabilized, but I think the real win here is that this is done at a regional level. So instead of Aspen having certain measurements and Basalt having weird measurements because we're half Eagle County, half Picken County, and having all these conglomerates, that the whole valley is, or our upper valley is measured in a similar way, so that we can compare ourselves evenly across, rather than having 5 different consultants measuring 3 different communities.
I think one thing that could be done, just kind of a solution to that, would be some kind of reconciliation for when you have a period where something changes, because you're going to find more stuff, and you do need to include that. But
Yeah.
just like in financial reporting, there's GAAP and non-GAAP, and they'll go and, I know it's not quite that simple for this, but you're including something or removing something to make it apples to apples over the
Right.
period. And then, but we also added this is going to be a new baseline now, but based on the old, on the old set of measurements, or set of criteria rather, this is what it would have been. So like a reconciliation.
Yeah.
Although, to some extent, like, what climate change asks of communities is that their carbon emissions are 0. So it doesn't matter what your baseline was or what it was last year compared to this year. It needs to just get to 0, and it just needs to go down, which is somewhat freeing, because then you need to do 2 things. You need to make sure that everything runs on electricity. That's our transportation system running on electricity. That's how we heat and cool our homes using electricity. And then the second thing we need to do is make sure that electricity comes from clean power sources. And luckily, Holy Cross is knocking out that second goal, so our only job here is to electrify everything and help residents make difficult choices, or help residents be able to afford to electrify how they use our transit system and how they heat and cool their homes.
I think you have to do both, though, because you're going to have to convince people to do it, and if it's not measured, like,
People do love
people-
measuring
yeah, I mean,
things.
They love it, right? Like the qualitative part, really, I mean, that is the most important. We got to lower it, period, full stop. But I mean, I think in order to get people on board, and also to see where you're going, we'll get like that BAU number, those are too high. And we have to make sure we have a great way to be measuring. So I completely agree in the directionally, but to get everybody.
Cultural shift, yeah.
We have to show it, because that's just people, they're not going to get on board as easily without the data. Is my perspective.
I think another great takeaway from this report is all day long we hear about the airport and the stress about the airport, and that 79% of jets into the Aspen airport are private, which is true. But when you actually dig into the numbers, the biggest chunk of emissions is from buildings, and it's not glamorous, and it's not a shiny thing to tackle, but how we heat and cool our homes and insulate them and make them more efficient is vastly more important in terms of the percent of our carbon emissions regionally.
Yeah. Buildings aren't sexy, but
I don't know.
like, how old is the terminal? You know what I mean? Like, how efficient is the terminal?
Yeah.
Well, I think we are about at the time we allotted, but this is an awesome conversation, and We need to do another one sometime, like, because this is important. I mean, and I think we gotta surface the things to get to zero, what it would take, and we need to have frank conversations about it.
Yes.
You could have a discussion about imagining what would happen if the airport wasn't there. What would we do as a community to get to net zero?
Yeah,
You know, because
that would change, that'd be a game
change
changer.
your mindset a little bit.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very
all.
much.
All right.
So we are going to take a quick 15-minute break, and we'll be back online at 6 o'clock for our regular meeting. Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back to our March 11th council meeting. We are going to get into our regular agenda. We just had our green team work session. And so before we get started again, I wanted to give the reminder about electronic participation. If you'd like to participate electronically, meaning actually interact, not just watch on TV, go to basalt.net and click on the Agendas and Minutes tab. You need to just go to the March 11th meeting packet, and in there will be Zoom instructions. I'll talk about public comments when we get to that point, but in the meantime, Pam, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Let's begin with Dieter Schindler.
Present.
Angela Anderson is out. Rick Stevens. Here. Hannah Berman.
Here.
Angèle Dupré-Bouchard is out. Ryan Slack.
Here.
And David Knight.
Here.
And the majority of the green team is present. Thank you. Not green team.
Luke 18.
Thank you.
Great team, green team.
That's the team I was shooting for.
All right. Next item up is item 2, consent agenda. It just consists of item 2A, the minutes from February 25th, 2025. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
And seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up, we have our call to the public. And just some reminders in the ground rules. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and you can address your comments directly to me. Make sure you identify yourself by your name and your address when making comments. And also, there's a sign-in sheet in the back of the room that you can sign. Always ask comments be courteous and civil. And we will make no decision nor take action except to direct Ryan, our esteemed town manager. One more comment on the public comments, that we do have some items with public hearings later on in the meeting. I would just ask that you refrain from making those comments until we get to that point in the meeting so that those comments can go along with those agenda items. With that, I'll open the call to the public. If anybody wants to come up here and say anything. Or if we have anybody online, which I don't see any attendees. All right, well, I will move along then to mayor and council comments and reports. What do y'all have?
Nothing.
All right. I don't have anything either. So let's move on to Ryan's manager report.
Yes, so I put something in your packet, which was a map that staff had created to show the area of parking enforcement. So as you all know, we put some money in the budget this year. We are working on finalizing a contract with Interstate Parking to do parking management in our downtown area. So what this shows basically is areas of 2-hour parking, which are kind of sort of in the Midland core, if you will. And then we do have some other parking areas that are existing that are 2-hour. Mainly those exist in front of the buildings where there are retail or restaurant type spots. And then we would be adding a small section over in front of the new River Lofts building for some of those businesses that are over there. We will come back to you with some code changes just to make sure that what we're enforcing is reflected in the code. Those are fairly minor. And then yesterday we actually went around and did a sign inventory because of course we have to sign appropriately for enforcement purposes. So there's more hair on it than one might see at face value, but nonetheless, our plan is to start in June, and Interstate Parking will help us with the rollout, kind of informing the public. They actually do a lot of walking up and down, sort of in an ambassador role, talking to people about the parking and such. And we will see how it goes. The good news about this company is they're pretty flexible and they can pivot. We know there will be unintended consequences with this, so where are we able to do more enforcement or less enforcement, or are there issues that happen up in the neighborhoods because of this? We just don't know. So we want to start with this sort of core area, and then we'll see where we go from there. But the contract will not come back to council. It's at a level that I have the authority to sign, so that's why I wanted to just make sure I brought it to your attention tonight, so you knew that that was in the works. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks for that. You have a question?
Yeah, I would just think that those 14 spaces in front of free range should probably be 2-hour parking, as well as probably half of those, that 32 over there.
Probably, right now, I can talk to you offline.
Yeah.
Starting to nitpick what, opinions are on that. We've done a lot of looking at this. Keep in mind that enforcement only goes until currently 6 p.m. So free range doesn't open for lunch. So having those as 2-hour for lunchtime activity doesn't necessarily, or during the day time hours. It is sort of more appropriate there for those, for all-day parking. And then across over in front of the Gold Rivers Court building, we're essentially mirroring what's there today. And so we'll keep that. There is a slight modification to it where there was a little bit of 2-hour parking across the street and a little all-day parking in front of the building. So we just want to make it consistent throughout. And then again, Ryan, as we learn, because they've been signed, but we haven't been enforcing. So I think we'll figure it out. And if we need to make that modification, like, hey, there needs to be more 2-hour parking here, or this is too much 2-hour parking, what have you, we'll be able to pivot.
All good.
The enforcement signs, will that be managed by the parking company, or is that we do the signs, they do the management?
We'll put the signs up.
So can we kind of presume that they'll be fitting of the new renovation on Midland?
Most of our signs follow the MUTCD, and which is a manual of uniform traffic control devices, and so we don't have a lot of flexibility for creativity and things like that. But so they'll largely look like standard parking signs.
Quick one, how will this roll out to the businesses, local businesses? And notifications, there's chamber meeting or?
Yeah, the chamber will help with some of it, of course. We can, since it's part of the Midland sort of project still, we can use some of our internal resources, and then this company does quite a bit of rollout on our behalf as well. We're probably going to put up some variable message boards just so that it's very obvious when, like we are enforcing parking, pay attention to parking signs type of a thing. So we'll put our best foot forward as far as informing the public, informing the businesses and that kind of thing. And creating a map also of where you can park. So we would like people to park again at the elementary school. We might convince them a little bit more this summer if, in fact, 2-hour parking is being enforced, that you can have a very quick walk on Swinging Bridge Trail to get to the elementary school and park all day. So I think we'll be. It's going to be bumpy no matter what. People don't necessarily like parking enforcement, but I think we're headed in that direction, so we'll see what we get.
And you said the duration limits that are on there are pretty much existing. Did I catch that?
Like when we enforce?
No, the 24 versus 2-hour, is that more or less what those zones are now, or do we tweak it?
Yeah, well, right now the 24 is actually 72.
Oh,
and
okay.
we want to shorten that a little bit so we have some storage of cars that occur, and so we want to make sure that cars are moving and people aren't keeping extra cars down in this area.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds reasonable. Yeah, it's going to be bumpy. There'll be things that come up, and
Yeah.
Sounds like we have the ability, though, with this service provider to be agile and work, bless you, and work through it, so.
And I've spoken with my counterpart in Crested Butte and then my counterpart in Dillon, both of whom, and these are more recent. In the past, I've spoken with a few other folks that use them, but the theme there has, and they say it themselves, is that they can be flexible. So if you realize there's an issue, you can kind of change it, and make the service better, I guess.
Yeah. It's important to make sure we kind of settle into it and let people settle into the change and then see what surfaces after there's the initial disruption.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I think is important, a message for those listening, is that it's not paid parking. It's just that we want cars to move around. So.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that. Do you have any other updates that are not parking related?
No, I think we're good. Yeah.
All right. Well, next up, we have our presentations, item 6, and the first one is 6A, a proclamation declaring March of 2025 Red Cross Month. And we have Jackie Whitsitt, and I'm sorry,
Christy Castor.
Christy Castor. Do you all want to come up to
Yes,
the table?
yes. You want us here?
Sure. Yeah.
It's really good to see all of you. I wanted to say old faces, but maybe that's not the proper terminology. Familiar and unfamiliar faces. Thank you so much for having us. So this is Christy, and she is the director of the Red Cross up for the Western Slope, and she drove over kind of just to see all of us. No, that's, she's doing some other things too, but we appreciate very much having had the opportunity to come here. So I guess you have a proclamation, and I'm hoping you would read it, or?
I can read it. Does anybody want to read it with me? I'm happy to read it myself, but whatever you'd all like. I don't want to hog the proclamation reading.
Would you like me to read the first paragraph to help you?
You guys can do it.
Do you want to split it in two?
I think I got this. It's like the elementary school book we pass around. But
Listen, I'm offering. You just asked, and I'm offering, and now you're shutting me down.
You better give it to him.
I can read it right here,
All right,
and it's right in front of me.
electronically.
So am I reading the first half? We alternating? What's going on?
You can read the first, and then we'll continue, and then Hannah, and then continue, paragraph by paragraph.
Okay. So this March, we celebrate American Red Cross Month by recognizing the compassionate acts of people in the town of Basalt and by renewing our commitment to lend a helping hand to our neighbors in need. Since Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross more than 140 years ago, generation after generation has stepped up to deliver relief and care across our country and around the world, bringing out the best of humanity in times of crisis. Advancing this noble mission, the volunteers and supporters who now give back through the Western Colorado chapter remain unwavering in their commitment to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of today's emergencies.
Their voluntary and generous contributions shine a beacon of hope in people's darkest hours, whether it's delivering shelter, food, and comfort during disasters, supporting service members, veterans and their families, or saving lives with first aid, CPR, AED, and other skills. This work to uplift our community is truly made possible by those who selflessly answer the call to help whenever and wherever it's needed. We hereby recognize this month of March in honor of their remarkable service, and we ask everyone to join in their commitment to care for one another. Now therefore, I, David Knight, Mayor of the Town of Basalt, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of the Town of Basalt in Colorado, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Red Cross Month. I encourage all citizens of Basalt to reach out and support its humanitarian mission. So in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 11th day of March 2025. When do I get to say hereunto? You know, it's like, it is not in my usual day-to-day vocabulary. So,
Well, it sounded good.
thank you. I'll pass this around,
Thank you.
which is awkward. On the table.
Got the seal and everything.
We just wanted to thank you for letting us come here today to do this proclamation. It's a national tradition that began in March 1943 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued the first Red Cross Month proclamation, and each U.S. president has followed ever since. During March, we celebrate and honor local community heroes who help ensure their neighbors never face crises alone. This is made possible by the 55 volunteers in the Roaring Fork Valley area who have dedicated thousands of hours of service in the last year. This includes responding to 11 home fires and assisting 13 families, and installing 71 smoke alarms and making 46 households safer. The Red Cross is proud to be part of this community, and we thank you again for the opportunity to recognize and celebrate our amazing local volunteers who turn compassion into action every day. And one or both of us will probably stump for, we always need more volunteers. So while we're on TV, there's lots of things to do, both disaster-wise and less disaster-wise. It was referenced here about smoke alarms. We have gone out and installed smoke alarms, and it's amazing, but some of these communities have not had a smoke alarm working for 20 years. You know, it's just been sitting there. So it actually does save lives. And the house fires too. I have not been involved in a house fire, but the Red Cross is always there when people have house fires. So thank you so much again. And I'll let Christy say whatever bosses say.
You said most of it,
Okay.
since I wrote that, but just thank you very much for taking the time to do this with us today.
Happy to support. And blood drives, that's still something the Red Cross does, I believe, correct?
We do. We don't do it everywhere. We actually just started collecting blood in Colorado for the first time in April of last year, so we're coming up on a year, mostly in the Denver metro area, but we're it's trickling out, so we hope to have one. There's a possibility, absolutely, to have a blood drive out in this area, so if you want to help sponsor or know of a location, that would be great. Let Jackie know, because we can work with our blood collections team to kind of set that up. It might be like a one time a year kind of a thing, but they are coming out to Gypsum, Grand Junction, and Montrose this year. So we're testing it out, and then hopefully we'll keep getting more in the future.
I was kind of surprised that it hadn't been in Colorado. I thought blood drives were, so it's time. It's definitely time. So
if you go over the mountain. We've got lots of opportunities to do
Christy
it.
and I are working on getting some places over here, and it seems like Glenwood or someplace, because, you know, they're coming from Denver, so they probably want to be stay on the I-70 corridor.
Yeah.
But if you have a thought, give us a holler. Thank you so much. Yay.
Here.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate all that you guys provide. Okay. Next up, we have another great topic. Item 6B, CPW update, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Lake Christine Dam improvements. And we have Ryan and several folks from CPW. If you all want to come up, there's not room for everybody at the table, but, you know, don't be shy.
We can pull some more chairs up.
You can do that too, yeah.
You must be Jenna, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. We haven't met in person, so introducing Jenna, and she's a CPW dam engineer. And
Be shy, Matt.
Maybe Matt's going to come up. All right. Matt Yamashita.
Leave me alone.
Jenna, what's your last name?
Svoboda,
Svoboda? Okay.
S-V-O-D-A.
I had a principal whose last name was Svoboda, so I'm familiar with the spelling from many years of that.
We're more ubiquitous than you would think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with that, I don't know, I sent a presentation, but I can just speak to it too, which it sounds like that's what we'll do. So, yeah, Jenna Svoboda, I'm with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They are Capital Development, Dam Safety Group. I'm the project manager for CPW on this project. You know, why we're here is 10 years ago in 2015, if you're all familiar with the Basalt State Wildlife Area, in the Lake Christine Dam and Reservoir, there's a kind of a berm, essentially. It's a natural berm, but it's a road cut along Two Rivers Road, and seepage from the reservoir. In that hillside, there's a shale bedrock with kind of this gravelly, silty material on top, and it's probably 60 feet tall. Half of it's bedrock, half of it's, this alluvium material is what we call it. And water was percolating between along that contact and essentially destabilize the slope. In 2015, there was a small slough that crossed the road. Kind of making a long story short, because of that instability and the steepness of the slope, the state put a storage restriction on the reservoir. Yeah, so you can see that's a picture of it in 2015. So, that's kind of been the status quo that we've had for about 10 years. CPW is now pursuing a project to fix the slope stability issue. So if you jump onto the next slide. The goals of this project are to, stabilize the slope and mitigate any kind of public safety risks that we have with that instability. And with that, remove the storage restriction and essentially bring the reservoir back up to its intended use, reestablish the fishery, and provide the opportunities for the community and visitors. So we've hired an engineering consulting group, RJH, to perform the design. We've already finished 60% construction documents in February, and we're planning, we're going to be closer to 95 or 100% by the end of March, and we're hoping to go into construction this summer. So going on to the next slide. This is that red area is our project focus area. How we determined that blob is we did a test fill in 2023 and looked at how much water was coming through the hillside, and that allowed us to kind of put the bounds on where we think this instability is, along with some engineering analysis. So if you jump to the next one, this is a zoomed in version. The essence of what we're doing is we're in that upper part of the slope, we're laying it back. So where it's too steep, we're just laying it back to a 1 vertical to 1.6 horizontal. Why we chose that slope is we're using CDOT road construction standards for road cuts to determine a factor of safety. So, and that's the maximum slope angle to give us that factor of safety. Kind of that, and that's the upper part. There's that kind of band in the middle of this this project, and that's and I'll show a section in a second, but the band in the middle is a filter prism, so that will allow water to go through the hillside, get filtered, and just allow the water to move through and not move any material. And then those kind of 3 stripes that are coming down towards the road, those are rundown areas, so the water will be channeled to those rock rundowns, and then allowed to enter the roadside ditch. So if you go to the next slide, this shows a typical section of what I just described. You can see the slope that we're laying back. That filtered prism is that triangle right in there. Yep. And then we're essentially just leaving the shale bedrock alone. One thing I'll note is there's a dotted line that comes off. It's pointed to as a temporary construction platform. So we think that we're going to have to build something to allow equipment and workers to access that upper slope. So we think that it'll probably be some kind of temporary platform. We're going to leave that up to the contractor, but this is likely the most the easiest way to do it. And that will extend into the road, so we do plan on, we've been working with the town fire department on this and with Ryan, that we would like to close close Rivers Road to two-way traffic, allow one-way alternating in the time that we're doing that excavation work on the slope. So if you go to the next one, it's basically the same section. The one thing I'll note, this is a section through that rock rundown where the water's coming through and then running down the shale, and those blocks at the bottom. What we're planning there is gabion baskets, so they're wire baskets with rock filled inside and then essentially stacked like kind of Lego blocks up the shale slope. So that will just keep everything tight and allow the water to move down in a controlled manner. So that's the essence of our design. Our construction timeline is we're putting the project out to bid in mid-April, so coming right up. I think Matt and the area folks are taking the lead on the public outreach and communication, but they all are working closely with the town to get the word out, signage, et cetera. We anticipate the contractor selection coming out mid-May to early June. Construction starting mid-June. We chose that timeline because school will not be in session. So we're really trying to focus our efforts on the time when school is out. We do anticipate a 2-month construction window. During most of that time, Two Rivers Road will be closed to two-way traffic, one-way alternating. However, I am aware that I think it's August 18th, is when school's back in session. So we'll make sure to put it in our contract that we have to have the road open by August 18th. And substantial completion being probably mid to late August. So with that.
Will that be one-lane alternating 24/7 during that time period?
Yes, and we will be making a traffic control plan part of the contractor's required submittals, and we'll work with the town to make sure that whatever they come up with will be acceptable, whether it's flaggers or a temporary traffic light or something like that.
Right, okay.
Is the existing MSE going to get disturbed, or does it stay there?
No. So the existing MSE, that's part of the dam. We're actually not touching any part of the dam. We're probably, a couple hundred feet away. And this was kind of a gray area when we were working with the state dam safety, where we're not really touching the dam.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was enough of a public safety issue, they still put the storage restriction on the reservoir.
Do you know how many, is it an export?
Yes. We have over probably 2,000 cubic yards of material that we need to export. We're looking for a home, so if anybody needs some reasonable, good quality fill dirt, or structural fill or something like that, please hunt me down.
So when this project's done, the cool thing is more water can go in the lake. Do you see the little piers and docks and all that stuff that's kind of marooned at this point, so that'll all be back in the water. It's going to change the
Yes.
face of the lake, right? Can you describe that a little bit?
I'll let you.
No.
One
Question,
quick,
Mayor,
before you,
council members.
what is the capacity of the reservoir?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm just curious. Thanks. Go ahead.
I don't know the answer to that either. I'll go back to the question that I do know the answer to. Matt Yamashita, Area Wildlife Manager, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So initially, this lake was utilized as an asset to the town of Basalt. It was managed historically in conjunction with the town. Town had an agreement with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, formerly Division of Wildlife, in order to manage it as a kind of a municipal lake. CPW we would stock it annually, anywhere from 3 to 6 times with catchable rainbow trout, and that served as an amenity to the town. There's a gazebo structure there. There was trash facilities, restrooms. It was a place that was right outside of town. It was close to town. It was one of the few locations here where anglers could actually use bait. So our regulations allowed that versus many of the other waters here that are restricted. So it was a kind of a unique amenity in the Roaring Fork Valley. After the storage restrictions were placed on that lake, we ceased all of our stocking regimens. So all of our annual stocking, the fish that are found in there, they're there because they're there. We're not stocking it annually anymore. A lot of that's just because the capacity at which we're storing it at right now just doesn't meet the requirements for a lot of the stocking. Mayor, to your point, I mean, we have structures in there that pier structure was designed and installed by an Eagle Scout back in the day, and something that right now it's not a usable amenity. There's pathways that are around the lake that are high and dry. They've been that way. Our goal would be to, after we complete this project, Jenna and her team are going to engage with the state engineer's office again and renegotiate and make sure that we can remove the storage restriction and try to fill that lake again to capacity. If we can do so, then that's the point where we'd like to return it back to what it was previously back in the early 2000s. So game plan again would be to stock it with fish, make it the same amenity that we had before, probably some improvements to the walkways and pathways around the water's edge. If not, then we'll have to explore some other options. We've been hesitant to explore those other options because of the hope of returning it back to a fishable pond, lake, but we'll see where that one goes. This is kind of a remarkable thing just in that we've been essentially in a holding pattern for last almost coming up on, I mean, we're over a decade now worth of waiting, trying to figure out what our next steps are. So this is a big forward step for our agency to move on something and at least get some resolution one way or another.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that I mean, I think that the lifting of the storage restriction from my standpoint, I think that we have a very robust design that's up to modern standards and well engineered. So I don't think that from an engineering standpoint that we're gonna have an issue with the with the state and getting that storage restriction lifted. With that being said, I mean, it's hard to predict exactly what the ramifications might be when we start storing more water in it. Are we going to find more holes that just pop out of the hillside? I hope not. We've tried to do as much due diligence as possible, but yeah, nothing's a guaranteed.
Well, it sounds like what needs to be done, and we got some direction and a trajectory. We'll see what happens. But at least stabilize that part in and of itself, and there's a benefit to that, it sounds like, as far as the water draining and getting it into the, not swales, the steps. So, any other questions or comments?
So how long do you think it would take to get that state approval? Is that like more? Is that another decade? Or
No, that's usually a pretty quick process. So the process with working with the state is once we get 100% design, so at the end of this month, we submit our design to the state and they review it and they essentially approve us to go ahead with the construction. So they're already invested in what we're doing, and they've provided the comments that they need to. And so if we build the project to the plans and specifications, in theory, and I've never actually seen it work otherwise, that the project will be approved by the state and that our storage restriction will be lifted. And that's usually, maybe a couple months after construction is complete. So our storage restriction gets lifted at the end of this project. We should be able to start storing water next runoff.
2026, we could look hopefully for restocking.
And I saw the mayor knocking on wood, because, you know, Jen is speaking, having never worked with the town of Basalt and all the anomalies that we tend to bring to the table. So there's always that 1 in a million thing. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen here. I think we've experienced that time and time again. So we'll count all of our blessings on this one. Just hold our breath and see where that lands us. But I think, respectfully, I mean, all of our engineers have done a lot of work on this one. And I have to give credit to Jen and her staff for helping us move this one along, because we've been trying. Ryan's, you know, he's witness to this one, but we have been trying for a long time and a lot of discussions to get something moving off of start on this one. So this one's a long time coming.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to come over and do this. Thanks for embarking on the project, and we'll look for an update down the road. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
This will make Auden so happy. He's been wanting it to be back to a fishery.
That'd be really cool. Well, next item up is item 6C, the Old Pond Water System Report and Recommendation. So another body of water in our community.
You have a theme at the beginning of tonight's meeting.
What's that?
I said you have a theme at the beginning
I know,
of
I like
tonight's meeting. So tonight, we're bringing to you that Old Pond Water System final report that we've been working on diligently with DHM. And we have Jeremy Allenson on the line that's going to make a presentation. As a reminder, you know, our Old Pond water system's been working for us. It was installed nearly 20 years ago now, and so the purpose of this report was, you know, through a partnership with the Roaring Fork Conservancy, really looking at that overall system and understanding what improvements might need to be made now that it's been functioning for some period of time. But I'll let Jeremy take it from there.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, my name is Jeremy Allenson. I'm the Natural Resource Programs Manager and Natural Resource Specialist with DHM Design. We were
Jeremy, could you speak up a little bit too? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, yeah.
It's not his fault.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Okay. We were tasked by the town of Basalt last year to complete a assessment of the Old Pond, Basalt Old Pond water system. And so, along with Matrix Engineering and Redfish Environmental, we set out to do that. And we put together a comprehensive report that was part of the packet tonight. And I'm going to just give a kind of a summary presentation of our process and findings there and some of the recommendations. So the purpose of the project was to complete a comprehensive analysis of the Old Pond water system. The impetus, you know, being that the Old Pond itself has been experiencing over the years, nuisance aquatic vegetation growth, and being that it is a stormwater treatment facility, understanding if there's opportunities and for improving the aesthetic and function of the pond while still maintaining its purpose as a stormwater facility. And so the project goals for this phase of the project included evaluating the existing pond infrastructure function. That included the head gate, the pipe and ditch delivery system, and the forebay as it relates to the stormwater treatment. Identifying physical and biological interventions that would improve the water quality and reduce nuisance aquatic vegetation in Old Pond. And then evaluating and understanding the water rights and availability associated with the pond, and reviewing the maintenance of the pond system and identifying any new maintenance recommendations. We also analyzed the vegetative condition and function of the stream channel and pond edge, to see if there's opportunities there to improve stormwater sediment treatment, aesthetics, and reduce overall maintenance. And then identifying some specific project recommendations for the system and developing rough cost estimates for those recommendations. So I'm going to, for the time we have tonight, I'm going to kind of jump over here to the site recommendations. We can share this presentation with you guys to look at more in detail in some of the project approach and analysis items. But so this is the project area here, which it included the headgate structure and all of the system going to Old Pond itself, as well as the outlet here. So the site recommendations, each of these items here on this graphic you can see are associated with some specific improvement recommendations for headgate, forebay, Old Pond, and the water transport system in between here. So starting with the headgate, you know, when we initially looked at the project with the town, there was, you know, significant sediment in the headgate, and there was actually a rock stuck in the intake pipe. Both of those have been maintained or maintenance, and the rock has been removed, and the pipe has been fixed at this point. But just, you know, looking at this more of a kind of a maintenance items here at the headgate system, installing a trash rack to prevent further rocks from getting into the headgate, and then, you know, looking at installing a spur dike to improve or to sustain flows at the headgate. Currently, with the way that the river's kind of moved in that area, it would be beneficial to have a dike there to raise the head to allow more water to come in, and then continue to assess whether installing a flume or a flow transducer would be beneficial at that location. So for the riparian vegetation management, we assessed the riparian vegetation along the open channel as well as around the pond edge itself. And we did that by looking at transects of the existing vegetation, what was initially planted there, and what has kind of taken over throughout the time it's been there, and then making some recommendations on removal of some of the non-native grasses and noxious vegetation, and replacing of native species that are deeper rooted species that would process nutrients and improve water quality along that system, as well as the pond system itself. Generally speaking, there's, you know, like everywhere in these systems, there's invasive species that take over, and there are a number of those that were identified, and recommendations for replacement and specific seed mixes and plantings that we would recommend in those areas. The forebay structure itself, we evaluated some improvement and ways to improve and formalize the maintenance access routes, constructing a bypass to allow for the water to be bypassed during maintenance of the forebay, deepening the existing forebay, and adding a trash rack to the existing forebay to filter out some more debris and trash, and then evaluating potential locations for underground water quality vaults. And so that on those locations, we did locate 2 potential locations for that, kind of on this north side of Two Rivers Road here. So project priority-wise, we prior prioritized the recommendations based off of some kind of lower hanging fruit items where they include maintenance and non-intensive infrastructure improvements. And then continuing to further evaluate some of the more intensive infrastructure improvements. Priority 2 projects includes more intensive and physical improvements monitoring, and then priority 3 includes the most intensive kind of physical interventions and improvements. So we developed a list here. You can see there's a number of things on here that range from some of the maintenance items previously discussed, like annually, cleaning sediment, some of the vegetation treatments, adding boulder drop structures within the channel to improve aeration, improving the overall aeration of the pond system, completing some mechanical vegetation removal along the pond, and some items that can be done relatively low cost, but could be effective kind of as a first step into improving the pond system. The priority 2 projects include continuing to evaluate installing a partial flume or transducer to measure water rights diversions, constructing a bypass around the forebay, deepening the forebay, and formalizing the old pond spillway with a concrete sill wall. Project 3 priorities include installing the rock spur to improve flow in the headgate system, installing the underground vault and new forebay, and pond dredging and sediment removal. I jumped over one of these site recorders, so I apologize here. I just want to go back. For the old pond noxious vegetation management, in the pond itself, we identified a number of mechanical, chemical, biological, and physical treatments, starting with mechanical treatments and potential physical treatments is what we would recommend, and then continue to further evaluate the need for chemical and biological treatments. There's, restoring the old pond to a healthy, functioning pond is going to take a little bit of the engineering upgrades that we've recommended, as well as some of the management strategies and maintenance recommendations here. As part of the analysis, we developed some rough order of magnitude cost estimates, and these are, there's a table in the report itself that has individual items for each of the infrastructure improvements and then pond and vegetation management costs here. And so we have developed a low and high cost opinion. And then also we identified some grant funding opportunities here. The grant funding opportunities were a combination of stormwater specific grants and water quality improvement grants, as well as some local grants that the town has had success with, and grants that are focused more on riparian kind of habitat improvement, as well as kind of more project-specific recommendations like noxious vegetation removal, fishing is fun grant, and other opportunities there. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions or anyone has any questions or comments.
Any questions or comments so far? Okay.
No questions here, Jeremy.
All right. No, there's a lot of information in the report, and I think it should provide a pretty good baseline for the town to move forward to getting the pond back to a functioning state. So just want to say thanks to Catherine and everyone there, and Matrix and Redfish for helping out with this project, so.
Yeah, I think what, I was just going to add, what Jeremy created was this nice presentation, which I can send a link to you all so that you can digest it if you'd like a little bit further. But this document will be really helpful for staff moving forward. Nothing needs to happen urgently, but it will give us some good budgetary numbers to shoot for. And as we continue to prioritize different capital improvement projects, we'll have this as a great document to work from. Also, as a reminder, Roaring Fork Conservancy and the Pickens County Healthy Rivers contributed $5,000 each to this planning effort. So I think that positions us well for grant funding moving forward, just to show that it's, of a community benefit. Other people kind of believe in this area and the improvements, and I think, there's definitely, I was thinking tonight actually with the CPW presentation that perhaps there's some interpretive signage, if nothing else, that might connect the two properties and just provide some synchronicity around the importance of river health and our fish habitats and whatnot, because, obviously it's very important to our community, so.
Well, thank you for that. And this, just to be clear, you're not looking for any direction tonight, you just simply were sharing the information. You guys are going to digest it as well.
Yep.
And then use that just kind of for proposals later for
Right.
facility planning.
Yeah, if nothing else, just a thumbs up that, it's a valid planning document for us to use going forward in our efforts.
No, that seems great, seems comprehensive, all the recommendations, and, a lot to bite off, it seems like, a couple of years, so.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just curious, would the vegetation management be, would that be something they would do or we would do?
It probably depends on how much Chris feels like he has the capacity to bite off. He and Trevor were both involved in this, and Chris has a lot of knowledge, but it would probably take some input from a consultant just helping him manage that a little bit. But it'll probably be a combination of the two. Mm.
Sounds a little like a Roaring Fork outdoor project.
Good thought.
Yeah. GoCo threw $500,000 at it 20 years ago, so maybe we can pull them back. But it's a good scope description, a good phasing plan, and I'd like to see it's the last piece of the river master plan that really needs to be finished. And it'd be awesome.
Great. All right.
Well, thank you.
All right. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Jeremy. Next item up, we have item 6D, which is our fourth quarter 2024 financials. And Doug, you're up for that one.
Thank you. All right. Should have in your book this graph. We'll start off. This is the graphical illustration of the general fund. Start with, here we go, hold on. Let's go to the next page. Here we go. We're going to start with, over to the left is revenue, and to the right is expenses. This is of the general fund. So you'll see that the sales tax and property tax continue to represent about 70% of the revenue of the general fund. And then there's an assortment of other categories that make up the balance. I think the thing to note on the revenue side is that sales tax, the town beat its budget that we had for the year by about 4%. But looking at the total taxes collected in '24 compared to '23, the number was basically flat, and still is not in excess of what it was in 2022. So we don't have a linear line going here on the sales tax number. It still feels to me that the number is flattening out. And we got a nice little shot of property taxes increasing with the assessed values increasing what they did. But the revenue line, to me, is starting to flatten out and maybe even coming down. Okay, so that's kind of a headline. It's good news now for the close of 2024, but just looking ahead, as we look our allocation of capital and budget things, it's just something to keep that in mind. Looking at the general funds, now this is again graphical illustration of the various departments. Leading the way is the Public Works Department at 29%, police is at 22%, admin, which is the finance and town manager and administration is 17%. Then we have the planning and building department at 11%, legislative is 13%, that is really council and the judicial functions of the town. And then we have recreation and pool at 5.7%, and then we have very little in elections. So the expenses were really kind of unremarkable. Across the board, there wasn't a department that did not make its budget. In fact, as you look now, let's go to the next page here, James. Thank you. This is really, so before I jump into expenses, this is again just looking at the
Let's make it bigger, sorry.
sorry, make it a little bigger. So what we do here in this format is, first column is the 23 actuals. 24, the second column is the 24 actuals. This is a 12-month number compared to the budget. Bless you. So you'll see that the total revenue line is, again, this is property, sales tax, or specific ownership for cars, franchise taxes, whatnot. Our middle number there, 9.5, is in excess of the 9267, slightly better than the year-to-date number for 2023. And then just, not to beat a dead horse here, but, the sales tax number was 7.1 in 2023, and it was slightly less in 2024. So, and then moving through the other categories of revenue, not a lot here that was that we haven't talked about before. Just paging down, I think when we looked at the numbers in December, and we did our second amendment to the budget, we trued up some of the revenue numbers. So these are really tracking pretty close to the actuals for 2024, are actually closely monitoring or closely mirroring the budget, the exception being taxes, which were a little bit higher. So just paging down, you'll see that revenue before other financing sources was 13 million compared to a budget of 12.6. We had some ins and outs of some reserves for the water fund, sold some assets, pulled some money over to from the general fund over to the construction fund, and again, so just the total revenue is 12.6 at the end of the day compared to a budget of 12.2, so it's a beat of about $400,000. And then just paging over to the right, you'll see the various expenses, 23 compared to 24. There's a beat here of about, I don't know, 660,000, I think, in total expenses. And that's really a combination of unspent capital money of about maybe 200,000, and the rest just OpEx, just across the board within all the various departments. So we ended the year with a surplus of 1.1 million. This is an unaudited number. We're going through our audit right now, but I suspect that's going to be pretty close to what we see when we do the audit, compared to a budget of 110. So we beat our budget by about, I don't know, slightly over $1 million. Okay, and it's principally because the revenue was higher, operating expenses were lower, capital was lower. Any questions there and kind of the highlights?
I guess one question would be, just back to your comments about, this year and the trajectory.
Yeah.
Remind us what the sales tax number is for 2025 compared to 2024.
It's a flat number,
Flat.
compared to flat to actuals.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just have to tread water. Can't take any water on, or we'll be under.
And inflation may or may not help.
Yeah, well, I figured that we'd have, we'd get a little bump with that, but, there's a lot of things that go for us and against us.
Right.
And I think I wasn't being overly aggressive. There's been some weakness in the number. Retail sales have come down, and this is a function of people spending money. And I think, the February number was down. still looking into all the various reasons why it was down. But anyway, so to answer your question, it's a flat number.
It's a flat number. Okay.
So I wasn't crazy with the budget. It's been kind of the MO here since, I've been here being kind of like conservative on the revenue and just conservatively budget the town's finances. So if we could on this, answer your question.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
If we go up to the upper right-hand corner here, I just want to show the cash here. This may be only interesting to me, but look at the cash. You look at the beginning of the year, this is 34 million is what we started the calendar year with. And then I'd have to, I show this every quarter. So this is the fourth quarter. So we actually spent some money over our reserves. And for the year, just page down just a little bit, James. We actually had used $4.2 million of our fund balances. And that's principally driven by the money that was deployed in the capital construction fund for Midland and the affordable housing project at Stotts Mill. Now we did generate a, I won't say profit, but we had surplus of the general fund of $1 million. And the noteworthy thing there is that as of 12/31/24, is an unaudited number, I believe that our reserves will be $12.5 million in the general fund, and of which we have a Tabor reserve against that. We also have a reserve on our policy of keeping 40% of our expenditures, rolling expenditures, as a reserve. So we have 5.8 million of our 12.5 like embargoed. It's not available for other things, but that we do have free funds of something like whatever it is between 5.8 and 12.5. It's like 6.8 of unencumbered money. And we've been speaking about that being our war chest for when we do our project for the police department, Public Works. At least that's what it is now. So, okay. All right, so let's move on to the restricted fund, if you would, next page. Maybe we'll go back down a little bit.
Sorry.
Yep. Thank you, James. All right, again, this is just graphical illustration of our elements of income. Restricted fund really consists of our post, which is of every dollar we collect, a third of it goes to the post, Parks, Service, Base and Drugs. Also have lodging tax in here, and we have tobacco in that number. And then the green is the REITs that we had generated, sales from various properties, whether it be a Roaring Fork Club or Willits or the various, we have like 9 different REITs throughout town. So that would be our REIT revenue. And then the other miscellaneous ones, I call cats and dogs, they're just kind of like out there. They add up to balance. Okay. Moving into the next page, just again graphically, and then this is just the numbers. You'll see not as extreme as they were in the general fund, but we had, again, left side is the first column is the 23 actuals compared to 24 actuals compared to budget. Just fast forwarding here to the end, we had a budget of total revenue of last year's actuals, 23 actuals were 7.2. Actuals for 2024 are 5.4 compared to a budget of 5,155. So we beat the budget. A little bit on the revenue side, and the post revenue was a little bit higher, and across the each element was a little bit higher. It doesn't compare great with 2023 because 2023 we had the element, we had a few other sales there when there were large REITs that did not replicate. I mean, they're transactionally based, so it's not a recurring revenue. And then looking at our expenses. We had 5.8 as our actual compared to our budget of 6.4. We underspent, and much of that was capital and then operating. Again, there was no department for the town in any fund that showed any signs of distress. So I think that's represented here in these numbers here. So It shows a use of funds for the year of 322 compared to what we thought we'd be using as $1.2 million. So although we did have a use of funds of 322, we still beat budget by the difference between 322 and 1251 by about $900,000. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, going into the home stretch here, last page. These are all our other funds that we have. The bond fund is simply our receives the mill levy for property taxes. So that comes in and that goes out. It's for the debt service on our taxable bonds and our tax exempt bonds. So it's money in, money out. You'll see $950. We have some interest. We just budgeted $950, but the actual receipts were higher relative to our expenses. So we did generate a surplus this year of about $28,000 that we just carried over to the fund. Capital Construction Fund, this is the projects for the solar, Midland, and affordable housing. This is really essentially the three funds. This is just a snapshot of a year. Doesn't really represent the body of work that we've done with Midland in general. It was, I don't know, 16 million or so went into the Midland project. This is just the piece that occurred in 2024. This also represents the green project that we had, solar project that was mentioned in the work session with the solar roofs at the Public Works Building and the various locations for Roaring Fork School District. And then we also have the affordable housing project going on over at Stotts Mill, which should be ready third quarter, beginning of third quarter, end of second quarter, thereabouts. And then the water fund, as we know, this is the enterprise fund. This is our revenue of 1.2 compared to our budget of 1.4. We did not make the revenue principally because of the tap fees. We had budgeted tap fees that were going to be coming in from BCC. BCC didn't pull their permit until January, so they created a little bit of a timing difference, or not a little, they created a timing difference. And those tap fees were received and credited in January. So, and they weren't budgeted in 2025, so they'll show a positive variance when we look at this, at least that element, in 2025 first quarter. And then our expenses have been under budget. We underspent significantly on capital, and we're think we'll be making that up this year with the addition of our new public works director starting like in April, him getting his feet wet, so to speak. And I guess I'm all wet, right? But he'll be driving that project, mainly the meter project. And then just closing it out, the Conservation Trust Fund, again, that's just you buy a lottery ticket, just a percentage of that lottery ticket goes into this fund. The fund gets distributed by population of the state. The state then divides it up by, or the population of the state, various towns, municipalities. So we get a little bit of a rake off on the lottery tickets, and it's for conservation matters. So anyway, nothing remarkable in that regard. So there you go. That's why it's the last one. So,
All right.
any questions?
Questions? All right. Thanks, Doug.
There you go.
Appreciate the update as always.
Yep. There you go. Okay, time too. Just remember 10 minutes.
I know.
We're still good to roll with 4 right now, right? Okay, next item up is item 7A, resolution number 6, series of 2025, a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving an agreement for professional services with Good Earth Landscaping and Maintenance LLC. And Ryan, you have this one.
Yes, so this is largely a housekeeping item. Every year we contract our mowing and maintenance on our gardens with an outside company. We've been using Good Earth for a number of years now, and this is a reflection of updated pricing. We have taken on some extra garden beds and things along those lines. This also does include the cost for using electric blowers to comply with our resolution that we recently passed here for town properties. And the total number for the year's $385,000 for this effort. And, we've been very happy with them. They do a good job and recommend approval.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions or discussion? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 6, series of 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, resolution approved. We'll move on to item 7B, which is a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 5, series of 2025. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving town code amendments, amending Chapter 13, Municipal Water Utilities, and amending Appendix C, Fee Schedule, Water Department Charges and Fees. And Catherine, you're in seat and ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the second reading of those code amendments as you described. Really, the only thing I wanted to add tonight was I had a couple more eyes on the review and had a couple typos and just clarifying language that changed between first reading and second reading, but that is shown in the memo. And then also just verifying that the bulk water rate will be charged at unmetered, not bulk, unmetered water rate at $250 per quarter. So outside of that, do you all have any questions? And Jeff's here too to help me if you have any legal questions.
Well, this is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing to see if anybody wants to make some comments on this ordinance. Come on up. I don't see anybody online either. So I will close the public hearing and open it up for questions or comments if anybody has any. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 5, series of 2025 on second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Catherine. Next item up is item 7C, a resolution number 7, series of 2025. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a contract for the design of the Safe Routes to School and Confluence Park intersection project.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Mayor and Council. And tonight, bringing to you this contract with OTEC for the design of the improvements around the intersection with Cottonwood and Two Rivers Road. The project would extend from where Picking County's recent Two Rivers Road improvements terminated all the way to the intersection and then south to include the Emma Bridge. This area was identified in our master plan and also in the Two Rivers Greenway master plan of a need of, an upgrade, and also the multimodal aspects around providing dual bike lanes and improved pedestrian improvements is also in line with those plans. The plans would include contiguous sidewalks and crosswalks that would be ADA compliant, which doesn't exist today. We'd also add some signage around school zones, which doesn't currently exist, and add rapid flashing beacons so that we have safer crossings for the school children. As you know, 7-Eleven is a popular destination, and then otherwise just getting people back and forth across Two Rivers Road. A lot of improvements in that area haven't really been done since it was the old highway. Otherwise, we'll include some landscaping both along Two Rivers Road, and then also kind of the more interesting landscaping effort would occur over that Emma Bridge. Last year we demolished some of the surfacing that's been there for a long time so that our design team can kind of better understand what might be needed as part of this. And then also there are some drainage issues that have been identified, and we want to make sure that snow removal is also able to be accommodated with the new design. So this contract before you tonight is to take the drawings to a full design level and then hopefully get those out to bid. We are also, just for your information, seeking out a couple different funding sources for construction. We've applied for a Safe Routes to School grant, and then we have a couple others on our radar. So hopefully, ultimately, when we get to that construction budget, we'll be able to supplement that with some other grants. So fingers crossed on that. But I'm happy to answer any questions you all have around this project tonight.
Thanks, Catherine. Any questions or comments for Catherine on this one? It's an exciting project. I mean,
Yeah.
really cool to see what these guys come up with, and that area, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, people are excited about rainbow crosswalks, so it can only get better from there.
Spread that to the bridge.
Yeah.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 7, series of 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving right along to 7D, which is resolution number 8, series of 2025, a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving contract change order number 5 for the Midland Avenue Streetscape project. And Catherine, this is you again.
Yeah, so tonight I'm bringing to you a change order for the Midland project. As we're all aware, the large piece of what remains is the paving from the church up to Homestead Drive. And, you know, our team got to know that area very well as we trenched the water line through that area and also the shallow utilities. And what came to light is that there isn't a lot of asphalt that remains there. And initially the design called for a mill and overlay, but to mill and then overlay, you use those millings. So if you only have 2 inches of asphalt to mill and then go back down, it really doesn't leave you with a stable surface and a structural surface that we would want in the long term. And knowing that we've made this, you know, multi-million-dollar investment through the remainder of Midland, it really, to me, felt a bit not responsible to kind of treat this part of Midland in the same way. So the proposal to you tonight does 2 things. It both would allow us to remove the top 9 inches of material that exists and then replace it with a structural base, and then allow us to do the full 6 inches of pavement. To save a little bit of money, we'll just do 4 inches of pavement in that parking area. That's kind of in front of the church and those residences to the north. But with this, we're just going to have a more stable, and long-term investment in this end of Midland, and it just feels like the right thing to do, given, you know, how the project has progressed, and making sure that we're making it a good investment in the full extent of the project.
That makes sense. I have a couple questions. So the Riverside Drive, that I think just off the intersection, maybe it's technically part of the intersection, is that going to get just normal milled and paved, or is that going to get?
Yeah, we'll clean that all up with the full depth pavement, everything back to like kind of where we disturbed. There's a water valve there, so we'll go back to our limits of disturbance and do the full pave to include that whole area.
And what about, so this is what the contingency was for, is for parts like this?
Yeah.
How much contingency is left? Like, what are we looking like there?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I think we're hovering around 600,000, something in that order of magnitude, so that would go into this.
We're well within.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, this takes it up to from 16.5 to 16.7. Yeah, I'm sorry, this amendment takes the Stutzman contract up to like 16.7, I believe.
No, not that high. This takes Stutzman's
Or the-
contract up to 12.8, but the overall, yeah. So we still have a little bit of contingency to say left in what remains. I mean, I think we're getting into pretty low risk as far as the overall project at this point. What really remains is probably some replacement of landscaping that didn't make it through the winter and was subject to people's poor driving habits. So that's the kind of thing we'll be addressing in the spring. But
Yeah, okay, well within the budget.
yeah.
It is, it's within the budget.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
I just wonder how this, I mean, we obviously knew that there wasn't a thick thing a year and a half ago, when we did the water line,
We did the water line last year,
all the
but
shallow utilities. Like, we've known about this now for 2 years, and so I just wonder why it drags out till now, probably because it hasn't been done. But it just,
yeah, we did the water line in December, last year. But we wanted to make sure we saw other things through and that we had contingency remaining. I mean, mill and overlay would still be a possibility if we ran into something else and that ate away all of our contingency. We wanted to prioritize things as we went. And now that we're at the end of the project and we have monies available, it seems like a responsible thing to do, knowing we have budget and this is something that would make a better finished product.
And if we didn't do it, we'd have like settling or cracking or that will.
That's right. And we've experienced some of that a little bit further up the frying pan where we've paved recently. There's just not a lot of structural, as we've seen kind of elsewhere, not everywhere in town do we have a good structural sub-base. And when you don't have that, your asphalt deteriorates a lot more quickly. So it just creates a more, a longer term product.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments? Or is it entertain a motion?
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 8, series of 2025.
Second.
It's
I'm
been,
going to abstain because I was out of the room on this one.
okay.
I don't know the details, so I don't want to ask now.
So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And Rick's abstaining. Right.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah.
All right, next item up is item 7E, which is a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 6, series of 2025, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to the Basalt Center Circle, BCC, projects, deed, restricted housing provisions related to Colorado Mountain College's potential purchase of 9 deed-restricted units at 140 Basalt Center Circle, lots A through E, Basalt Center Circle subdivision, Basalt, Colorado. And James, I think you have this one.
Yeah, thank you. We have Matt and Steve here once again from Colorado Mountain College as the applicants. As the mayor indicated, this is a public hearing and second reading on an amendment request submitted by CMC on behalf of BCC Basalt LLC, and they're requesting amendments to the rental provisions on 9 of the deed-restricted units in the BCC project at 140 Basalt Center Circle. As was introduced at first reading, the project has 17 deed-restricted units in it with rent caps. And Ordinance 9, Series of 2024, approved the condominiumization of the units, and it set out a priority of purchasers for the deed-restricted units. And CMC would like to purchase 9 of those units. And as a request, they've requested the ability to have their employees and working college students be able to have a priority in renting those units. And then if there are not CMC employees and college students, then it would go down the waterfall that's set forth in ordinance number 9, series of 2024. CMC has also requested the ability for employees to have the right to have a first purchase on the units if CMC were to ever sell those units with a 3% appreciation cap. And as was explained at first reading, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, reviewed the requests and recommended approval of the rental adjustment provisions, but not the for sale provision request. And council approved the ordinance on first reading as was recommended by the P&Z and BAC Commission. with the rental provision adjustment, but not the for sale adjustment. So the ordinance has not been amended since first reading that council approved. So this evening, staff would recommend hearing any additional comments the applicants have, taking public comments because it's a public hearing, and providing council discussion on the topic. Matt and Steve, do you have additional comments for the council this evening?
Thanks, James. Thanks to members of the commission or the town council. So I'm Matt Gianeschi. I'm the president of Colorado Mountain College, and thanks for hearing this a second time. We don't have any comments on the rental request or the adjustments based upon the rental. The one thing I would say that if the council is willing to sort of help us think through the for sale option. I recognize that's not being recommended. That wasn't recommended the last time. Having options that allow our employees and your employees too, these are the same things that we're all wrestling with and trying to help people find permanence. It is something that I think is worth a conversation as we start to think about how we try to help people stay here. Rentals are awesome for helping our people move in, especially if you have somebody coming in from out of area, if that happens to be the case. They do allow people to adjust, but eventually building wealth individually is something that's a priority for us to try to help our people become independent to the extent they can, living in our environment. And so, anyway, even if it can't be done tonight, and we appreciate where you all are in having that conversation, it would be a request of ours, though, that maybe over the next couple of years we have this conversation just to try to clarify what would a process look like where we could try to work together in partnership with the town and try to establish ways where we can help our employees not only secure affordable rentals, but potentially even find affordable purchases. And again, in partnership with the town, a way that we can try to work together to do that. So that would just be a request to sort of put that somewhere, maybe it's not on the top of your list, but somewhere where it doesn't get too buried, that by the time we have occupants in these units, that we at least can give some assurances that this will be reviewed another time, and we'll try to establish guidelines that are mutually or jointly acceptable.
Any comments?
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing for anyone who would like to come up and speak on this agenda item. Anybody on the phone, although I don't see anybody but the panelists still, so I will close the public hearing and open it up for council questions and comments. Ryan, you want to go?
Yeah, but I was just wondering the cost of these units. I tried to go back and look at what we paid. I don't think it's any different. It doesn't have to be public knowledge, but there's nothing in we had like exhibits that were handed out when we bought them. And I was just wondering what the actual affordable cost of these units are, if that's.
For the category 1 units, they were $335, and then for the category 3, they were $390.
Okay, cool. Thank you, James.
That's right.
And I think down the road, I think when we get to that, we could cross that, because who knows? You could put it up for sale and it could fall all the way through the waterfall again.
Right.
And then we're right back here. So I don't think the conversation's ever closed. I won't be here, as far as I know. But, I think we hear what you're saying, but there's no easy answer tonight for it.
Thanks. Rick?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I think that the opportunity to continue this partnership with CMC is a really great benefit to the community, given what we're looking at down the road here a little ways with future projects. And, at the end of the day, I also think that this is kind of a milestone, perhaps, that maybe Bach and P&Z should look at and maybe, I went home and watched the video of last meeting, because I wanted to be clear what I thought I heard. And, you know, maintaining a 3% cap, and also the waterfall does put some boundaries around it. And, you know, we don't want to get painted into a corner, and I don't think you guys do either, to be flexible enough to manage our resource efficiently and, you know, and create as maximum benefit to our employees and workforce and citizens. So I'd be in favor of just, I don't know how you would work it out, Jeff, with language, but if this gets revisited every 6 months or on demand, or if it even needs that, some way of suggesting that it's not going to lay there dormant until all of a sudden it's an amendment to a process that we've got to go back through a whole bunch of stuff.
It is a land use entitlement, and so it would need to be the owner of those entitlements, so it would need to bring an application forward to amend this in the future. So that's the developer. Or if the project were developed, like the association would probably have standing to bring a development application to amend the land use approval. So, you know, we as the town, this isn't legislation that we could just amend on our own initiative. This is in the code. So, I mean, I think what council has indicated to the applicant is, look, might be something we may want to consider in the future, but not just for these 9 units, but maybe a broader look at the project. So that's something that the developer or, you know, future owners of the project would like to pursue. There's a path to do that.
Isn't the project going to be restricted in that way regardless? By virtue of the fact that it's got a land use approval for 17, 23, and whatever the last number was?
Right, but if you're suggesting that I think the question is, if there was a desired, if the council wanted to consider a possible amendment to the land use approvals to allow for sale of the units from employers to employees, which was what was requested by CMC, that there would need to be a land use application to do that. And I think council's kind of indicated generally that if you were to consider that, it would be as part of a more global look at that condition as it applies to all the restricted units, not just these 9 that are under contract.
Would that be something that would be under review if you looked at the waterfall in its entirety?
Right. Yeah.
Like if the town was to adjust the waterfall,
Sure.
that it could be plugged in there.
Administratively?
No.
Yeah, okay.
But wouldn't it be, once these sell to different owners, you can't unilaterally change the waterfall. Like, we may not, as owners of 6 units in there, care to change the waterfall, whereas CMC, if they own 9 units in there, may want to.
Right.
You know, so there would have to be agreement among the owners if you're going to look overall at the waterfall.
Yeah, so after the units are sold, you know, the questions, all right, who has standing to bring the land use application? I think it's the association for the development would probably be the party that would have standing.
Good questions. What other questions or comments?
Well, it seems to me it'd be worth looking at, you know, even if down the road, because I think it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The demand for these things are going to be outside the waterfall as well. And we're not always going to have, we've already seen that, the availability, you know, the people that we thought were going to buy aren't buying. And so where do we shift gears there to keep these things moving forward? And again, the point of view of capitalizing future projects by being able to recoup some of that investment from whoever's investing. I'm not thinking generally, I'm not specifically saying CMC, I'm thinking as an overall direction of Basalt's affordable housing program.
I think one thing to keep in mind is I don't think the waterfall is broken. The waterfall is working. It happened to be on this particular project, given the timing, some of the entities that were toward, the front end of that waterfall, if you will, just didn't have the means or desire to purchase at this time. But, keep in mind, should those units resell, that it kind of goes back to the beginning of the waterfall. So we're still operating within it for this given project. So I don't know that I would say that it's not working. And other projects, like we talked about the last time we discussed this, there are other opportunities if we feel as a town, we have a few projects ahead of us here that a waterfall for a given project should change a little bit. We certainly have that. And developers that come in are offering that up too. I think on parcel 5, we have some preference for people working in the arts, if I recall correctly. So there are some of those modifications. But I just want to make sure that we all understand that we're still in that waterfall that we contemplated.
Yeah, I get that. I understand that. I think there was disappointment last time that it went through the waterfall and it was maybe or maybe the school district doesn't buy, but there are teachers that need an opportunity and that passed them by because the district wasn't the purchaser to rent it.
Right.
So that's what I gathered from the disappointment and sort of why we're here, but I'm good with this as it is.
And I think one other kind of point is that the waterfall for this project specifically is a little bit different than the waterfall that is generally in the town's guidelines. We added, as part of the development review, the on-site commercial entities had an opportunity to have a priority, so that's a bit different than, it typically falls, but just a note on that.
Can these units be sold to the school district by CMC?
Yeah, they go back through the
We'll have to
They
go
go
through
back
the
through the
waterfall
waterfall,
again.
yeah.
But they could, rather than sell it to an employee, they could sell it to another entity.
Mhm.
If the town would have a right of first refusal, and then it would go to
That kind of starts at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree the waterfall, it's working as intended. We just have to ask ourselves, is that what we want to do the same way in other places and
Yep.
for other, all valid questions.
I'm also good with this as intended. I really appreciate you guys trying to create stable housing for employees and students. I think that's critical. And I know you said you didn't ever want to get into the housing business, but I think, you've read the writing on the wall and you guys are approaching it in a thoughtful way. So thank you. And I would keep it as approved with the recommendations with Bach and P&Z, just to make sure that we go back through the waterfall. And if we come back to this exact conversation, I think it's well worth continuing the conversation about employee ownership. But I would like to see it go through the same prioritization again.
Yeah, and I thank you for the comments. That was good. And I'm supportive of this amendment as well. I had a chance to think about this, and it's novel for you. It's a novel for us. The modification to the waterfall. It's a minor one, but it's interesting. I think because what it does allow is that people who are working full time, and this has been pointed out, but just to kind of put it all together, people who are working are able to put down roots while they're also getting their education, doing something that benefits themselves and increases their value in the workplace, and it enables them to put down roots here so that they can bring that value here and it can stay here, and not just in Basalt, because I know we talked about that, coming to and from, and what does that mean? It's also a benefit for the region. We have to think about housing in terms of the region, not just us. And I'm not saying that we're myopic or by any stretch in that, but I do think we have to look at this big picture. This is good for the region, which means it's good for Basalt, and it means the sum is greater, or that's greater than the sum of the parts when you think of housing in those terms and the way the whole economy works. We talk about region all the time.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think, so I'm supportive, and I would like to come back at some point for looking at a way, and I don't know if this is another, where the it'll be a land use thing, but a way for students who are graduating to stay in place. I don't know how that would be, if that would be an ordinance, that'd be something else, how we have to modify that. Because I think that in order for that hypothesis to work, you go through, like say, you are gonna be a teacher, right? And you're studying at CMC to get to that point. Now you're done. Now you get a job. You're guaranteed a job, right? So you have, and then you can stay in your housing, and it's that continuity. So James had mentioned this in the last meeting.
Yeah.
I would like to put that kind of in the backlog, so we can figure out how to have that continuity, not just for wherever we need to, in order to kind of keep that stability in the housing for folks who are in there, if they're going to do something else that kind of fits the bill, fits the intention of that housing. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to speak for how the town of Basalt will handle that. I think I shared this last time we were here. Eagle County has a similar provision where we have shared, we have a couple of apartment buildings in Edwards that we share, that we jointly own. And what we do in those cases is that while they're students, so we split those units 50-50 between the two entities, the college and the county. They allocate theirs toward workforce. We allocate ours toward students, but workforce. When a student graduates and chooses to stay in that unit, then we just move them over to the other side of the ledger, and Eagle County picks them up as an Eagle County qualified renter. And so then, our tenant. And so then what happens is it opens up the next vacancy. So we just come up with a joint use. And I recognize this is a limited number of units, but there may be some way where we can just have an understanding that those students, as long as they continue to qualify under the Basalt guidelines, that they would then roll into the guidelines covered by your existing housing authority. So something like that, it would be a fairly straightforward process that we've done in other entities, and I recognize that we're dealing with a larger volume in other cases, but the logic applies. We can sort of make that some kind of assurance to the student and to local employers to really, I would love to almost put a bounty on our students that when they're graduating, employers are like, they have housing.
They're here.
I want them. And we will go fight for them. I would love to see employers fighting for our graduates. I mean, I'm sure they do already, but that would be one more opportunity to try to help our students feel that they have a home here. So.
Yeah, I mean, there already is demand for workers if they can now they have something that makes it easier for them to take that job if they want to. Rick, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I thought I heard a 2-year kind of grace period too, from when they graduate and they're employed to when they might want to make a career move if they had that opportunity. But 2 years would kind of be the limit of how long they could hang out. And I also think, just to back up a little bit, is I think this should be looked at by Bach and evaluated, and perhaps talk to the developer, and who probably hasn't sold all his units yet and will be the controlling member of the HOA potentially, and get a feel for how it would flow if it needed to, so that if it happens, we at least have some sort of path that's schematically designed to function. I don't like restarting things. Is very difficult to do if you close the door. You have to go through the whole process again, and I think that is encumbering the whole workforce housing issue as well. It always seems like there's another boulder in the path, so maybe we can make it a little smoother somehow. But I mean, I support what they're doing. So I'm not gonna vote no or anything, that's for sure.
James?
I think you could, approve the ordinance as it is if you're comfortable with that, and then just make a suggestion or direction to staff to go back and work with the applicants and Bach in terms of figuring out a mechanism to, make the buffer and the allowance for students that graduate and come back to work in Basalt within a certain time period, have the ability to stay in the.
Or in the region, like you said, whether it's Carbondale Fire District or Roaring Fork School District or some other governance.
That could be
Hospital.
one of the details that
Yeah.
Bach discusses.
That makes sense. Is that clear? If you're supportive of it, is that clear? Cool. I don't have any other questions or comments. Anybody else?
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt ordinance number 6, series of 2025 on second reading.
Second.
And just a question on the motion. Did you want to add the allowance for add the direction to do that?
No, just as written.
Well, I think the staff can heard the
Yeah,
direction.
that's on the
So we don't have to put that in the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just
Okay.
approved and let them, congrats guys. Well, I guess it has to be voted.
All right. Well, we have a motion on the floor. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Sure. All right, let's begin with Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
and David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for working with us.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we can definitely do it. Let's go into session first to give them a chance to start tearing down the TV and then,
Mayor, I move that the town council enter executive session for a conference with our attorney for the purpose of discussing personal matters in accordance with CRS 246402-4F.
Second.
that was more specifically,
More specifically, the town manager.
More specifically, town manager.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in executive session. Thank you, everyone on TV. We'll be adjourning at the end of executive session, so we'll see you next time.